Welcome to CEO Chairside with Dr. Greg Grillo, where real dentists share the real stories behind the scrubs. From the operatory to ownership, from day one chaos to planning an exit on your terms. This is where dentistry meets life, leadership, and legacy. No scripts, no fluff, just unfiltered conversations that move the profession forward. Let's get into it. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode. Glad to have you here as we get into this new year. And man, everywhere you look, we're talking AI, AI in dentistry. So powerful, it's so useful, but it's so easy to get wrong. And that's really the topic today. I am in deep with AI right now on so many projects. I'm very excited to talk about this. I'm very excited to bring this to many of the clients that I'm working with in ways that dentistry badly needs. And so I just really want to spend some time talking about AI because I really think we're at a moment in dentistry where adoption is moving faster than understanding. And historically, that's where problems tend to begin and where we've already seen some problems coming up. And so, really, the hope is that we could give you some guidance that will help you into this ever changing space. AI has really become normalized almost overnight. It's not something that dentists are really considering. It's something they're already using one way or another, and it's often quietly, it's often informally, and it's often with good intentions. And before I go any further, I want to be really clear about something. This is not an anti AI episode, not at all. I'm actually very excited and optimistic about what AI can do for dentistry as well as for us personally. I think it will ultimately make our practices more efficient, and decision making is going to be more informed, and leadership is going to be more strategic. But optimism doesn't replace responsibility. And right now, what I'm seeing across dentistry is really a widening gap between enthusiasm and governance, between what can be done and what should be done. And what we find out is when technology changes faster than leadership frameworks, or when the right guardrails aren't in place, the risk doesn't show up immediately. It accumulates quietly, and often it surfaces later, and it can be really expensive to fix and can cause some serious problems. So, one of the most common phrases I hear right now, and I hear it pretty much every week, is some version of, I just ran it through ChatGPT, I dropped a note into Gemini to clean it up, or we're testing an AI tool that plugs into the practice management system. And none of these systems really sound reckless. They sound pretty practical and useful. They sound like someone trying to keep up, someone that's trying to be efficient, trying to make progress. But every time I hear it, my mind goes to questions that most dentists haven't been encouraged to ask yet. Where did that data go? What assumptions did the AI make? What context did it not have? And who is ultimately accountable if the output is wrong? Because AI doesn't feel risky in the same way other mistakes do. There's no obvious failure point, there's no alarm, no angry patient in the chair. It simply produces something that looks reasonable. And in healthcare, reasonable is often where risk hides. So let me just pause here for a moment because this is super important. The problem is not that we as dentists are careless. The problem is that generic AI tools are incredibly convincing. They write really well, they sound confident, they organize thoughts clearly, they summarize complex ideas quickly, and when something communicates fluently, we tend to assume it understands what it's talking about. But really, generic AI doesn't understand dentistry. It understands language about dentistry. And that distinction really matters more than most people realize. See, generic AI tools, they're really designed to be broadly useful across lots of different contexts, millions of contexts. They're trained on really enormous, diverse data sets. And so they work best by recognizing patterns and synthesizing information and producing responses that are statistically likely to make sense. And that's pretty impressive. And that can work to a certain degree, but dentistry is not a statistical average. Dentistry is very niche. It lives in nuance. It lives in trade-offs. It lives in timing, leadership, human behavior, payer dynamics, regulatory constraints, long-term consequences, standards of care. There's so much there. And generic AI doesn't know your practice. It doesn't know your state regulations. It can look into them. It doesn't know your patient population. It doesn't know your scheduling realities, doesn't know your clinical philosophy. It doesn't know what you tried last year that quietly failed. It knows patterns from everywhere, and everywhere is not where you practice. So when a dentist tells me I asked AI what I should do, my first instinct is really to ask in which context, because advice without context is just a guess. And in dentistry, guesses can be very expensive. So let me slow this down further because there's this subtle trap here that smart, capable people fall into all the time. And it's the illusion of personalization. So dentists will say, but I gave it context. And I believe them. They probably did a paragraph, maybe about the practice, a few constraints, a snapshot of the situation. But dentistry doesn't operate in snapshots. It operates in patterns over time. It operates in second and third order effects. It operates in trade-offs that just don't show up immediately. And generic AI doesn't track that really well over time, longitudinally. It doesn't remember your history in a meaningful way. It doesn't understand how scheduling change today creates hygiene pressure 6 months from now, or how financial policy tweak impacts case acceptance later. Like how to pull all the pieces together inside the filters of your practice. So while the answer may sound logical to you and a lot of times even polished, it can still be misaligned with the reality. And that's not a failure of intelligence. It's just a limitation of the design, and it's up to us to understand that limitation. So let's talk for a minute about HIPAA, not in a dramatic way, but really in a realistic one. So HIPAA doesn't say you can't use AI, but it does require that you understand where that protected health information goes, who can access it, how it's stored, how it's secured, how long it's retained, and whether the vendor is willing to sign a business associate agreement. And most consumer grade AI platforms were never designed to operate inside regulated healthcare environments. That doesn't make them unethical, it just makes it a misalignment. And one of the most common things I hear is, I didn't include the patient's name in what I put in. Well, HIPAA doesn't care just about names, it cares about identifiability. So, what does that mean? Dates, conditions, treatment sequences, appointment patterns. Those things combined can still identify a patient, even if you don't think you've stripped away the obvious markers. And so, what concerns me isn't malicious intent, it's actually well meaning clinicians using tools that weren't built for the environment that they're being used in. And a recent healthcare IT survey that I saw shows that a majority of small and mid sized practices now have staff using consumer AI tools without any formal policy or oversight. And in many cases, practice owners don't even realize it's happening. Again, that's not negligence. It's just a governance gap in a whole new space that we have to learn how to control. And governance gaps like that, they don't really announce themselves. They just show up later, usually when the stakes are higher and there's a problem. So let me pause again because this is where the conversation often goes sideways. Some people hear this and they think the answer is to ban AI entirely. That's not realistic and it's not necessary. It's really not helpful. Because the issue isn't AI, it's just that we're using the wrong AI for the wrong job. And nowhere is that more dangerous than when AI starts integrating directly into practice management systems. This is something we really got to watch out for because it's all over the place. On the surface, PMS integrated AI sounds pretty incredible. You have these automated tools, automated notes, smart scheduling, faster documentation, cleaner workflows. And hey, done correctly, engineered correctly, these capabilities can be extremely powerful, very, very useful. But most dental practice management systems were built for human input and controlled workflows. They weren't really designed for these probabilistic systems making autonomous changes in the background. And I've already seen real world examples, not hypotheticals. There's plenty of those, but we've seen some real world examples where AI integrations that they look like they should be on the server working with the PMS. We've seen this where they cause some subtle but serious issues. We've seen chart data overwritten incorrectly, scheduling logic drifting over time, filling narratives becoming inconsistent with what actually happened clinically. There's no alerts, no obvious failure, just downstream confusion that shows up months later during audits, billing reviews, or team frustration. So your PMS is your system of record. And once data integrity is compromised, fixing it is painful, expensive, and sometimes really impossible to fully unwind. So this isn't about anti-innovation. Again, quite the opposite. It's just about understanding that not every system is a sandbox, and we are dealing with new technologies that are really exciting, but they're very challenging, and we have to be careful. We just saw a client recently where a third-party AI system was installed on the server, and it ended up corrupting the entire database. That's pretty serious stuff. So I want to shift perspective for a moment from dentist to leader because leadership in dentistry isn't just about clinical decisions or financial performance anymore. It's about technology stewardship. And there's really a difference between AI that answers questions and AI that is engineered to advise within healthcare. So advisor grade AI is just built differently. It's designed around a specific domain. It respects constraints. It operates inside guardrails. It understands accountability. It has an entire training system built into it. It doesn't average the internet. It doesn't overwrite data casually. It doesn't guess when the stakes are high. And that difference isn't about being smarter, it's about being intentional. And this is where dentistry is actually heading right now, whether we like it or not. Behind the scenes, this is exactly why we're building something differently with the team that I'm working with at Method Pro. It's not a chatbot, it's not a novelty, it's not something that just sounds impressive. We're actually engineering AI that understands dentistry as a system, clinical, operational, financial, and human. AI that learns a practice over time, AI that respects compliance and guardrails, AI that supports decision making instead of shortcutting it. And that kind of work takes longer. It's more expensive, it requires restraint, but healthcare has never rewarded speed without understanding. Dentists don't need more answers, they just need better guidance. I see this all the time. So let me pause one last time and really zoom out. The real question is no longer whether you should use AI. That decision has already been made by the world around us. The real question is whether you understand the AI you're using and whether it was built for the environment you're placing it in. It's one thing to use ChatGPT to plan a trip, it's another thing to use it to analyze financials in a practice or to look at a clinical situation. In healthcare, not knowing isn't neutral, it's exposure, and it can be really dangerous. So AI is going to absolutely reshape dentistry. Whether it becomes a competitive advantage or a quiet liability really depends entirely how intentionally you engage with it. And leadership today isn't just clinical, it isn't just financial, it's technological. And the best leaders don't rush, they choose carefully. And so the whole point of this episode is just to help you slow down in a world that is pushing stuff on us and be careful what you're feeding into generic chat GPT, for example, or Gemini, any of these tools. Before you put something into a prompt window, you need to really understand all of these factors around it in the healthcare environment that you're working in. And it's this pause that's really where good decisions live, where you can take some time to understand. And so if this resonates with you, please reach out. We are deep into AI. We understand how to build tools that make sense and can be very, very useful to your practice. I'd love to hear from you anytime. And if you know anyone that's using AI in their dental practice, they need a little guidance, maybe pass this episode on to them and be sure to subscribe. And I'll talk to you soon. That's it for this episode of CEO Chairside. Real stories, real lessons, because this profession is more than a practice. It's a journey. Catch you next time.